This is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We're a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 233 is brought to us by Bybit. We are about to talk about all of the things you can do on Coinbase. And Bybit, you can do almost all of those things as well. Banking, trading, spending with their card, getting up to 10% yield on your stable coins. Extraordinary. And if you click my link, which you can find in the Bybit blog, which you can find in the show notes, you get sick benefits on top of it all. It is a great time to be alive, but you have to make intelligent moves. And I don't have all of your money on Bybit, but for the things you do every day, just migrate over to the blockchain. It is so much easier and so much better, and you can do it with one of the largest platforms in the world and get benefits for doing so because with Bybit membership has its rewards. It is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, and by now, if you've been with me for any amount of time, really, you kind of know how I do things here. When we have investments that are running, there's no real need for me to talk about them a whole lot. You know, it's like gold and silver is running and the mining stocks are going crazy. Well, yeah, they're supposed to. That's why we invest in them, so they can do things like this. It's great. But I would much rather, on this podcast, talk about things which are on sale, talk about things which are cheap, talk about things which are highly investable. So we've been shifting over to crypto lately, and we'll continue to do so because that's where the value is. And in my opinion, there shouldn't even be a whole lot of value here. But as we all know, the crypto market just loves to give it to us over and over, like a gift, like a Jelly of the Month club, just the gift that keeps on giving. And if we've learned anything, we should know by now to take advantage of these gifts when they are given to us. And this, in my opinion, is probably one of, if not the single best gift out there. Like, where would I rank it? Like maybe just below Bitcoin. And Bitcoin would only win in this particular situation because it has finite supply. Because when it comes to the crypto market, in my opinion, not financial advice, nothing you hear on this podcast is. When it comes to crypto, Coinbase is probably the best play on the entire board for a lot of reasons. I think it is probably the least volatile play when it's all said and done. So we have, as far as crypto goes, more downside protection here than we would anywhere else, really. And we don't discount that here. We actually really, really value that here. You know, people get so enamored with the upside. You know, it's almost like in crypto, they don't even care about the downside. Well, you should. And when there's something out there which will give you superior downside protection compared to what else is out there, you need to take notice. You need to value this the same way you would value a lot of other things. And Coinbase, in my opinion, gives you superior downside protection in this space. And I think it's something that even the most hardcore TradFi investors out there and the most hardcore crypto investors out there should all have a piece of. Because the downside protection, like I said, is superior. But the potential upside here, my gosh, we should talk about it. Because I don't think any of you fully understand what's going on here. And again, we've been talking about some of the best value out there in the market in terms of the extraordinary potential for the next 5-10 years, which is our time horizon here at the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. So we've mentioned Bitcoin, which, you know, still has the best upside to downside potential out there, in my opinion. Coinbase is probably second. And then if you recall, we also talked about Bitcoin treasury companies, which certainly do have more downside potential, but have just explosive upside potential. I mean, what would you give to invest in BlackRock early on? Now, some people might not like that comparison, but that is what these companies are trying to be. And when you're dealing with a superior asset over fiat, like, you're going to tell me they don't have a chance? What we're talking about today with Coinbase is not investing in BlackRock early, but investing in probably like JP Morgan early, like early. And unlike those Bitcoin treasury companies, you're getting tons of upside with a lot less downside, in my opinion. They're just too established. They're so big now, they're unacquirable, which means they will be the ones doing the acquiring in the future, which is only going to make them stronger. They've already been acquiring. Now let's take a step back before I go on here. We have to mention this again. It's important. We all pretty much agree here that the future is more digital than it is analog. And we all understand that Web 3 is going to have more of an impact than Web 2 is in terms of technology. Now, this is all but a given. Technology goes forwards, not backwards. As far as my audience goes, there might be a very small handful of you who actually think the future is more analog than digital. That's fine. But for now, we're going to kind of put the 4 or 5 of you aside. You can all hang out, sit around a sundial, while the rest of us talk about the future. But we pretty much know the future is going to be more digital, and we invest in the future. But even at present, Coinbase is freaking massive. Remember, we're talking about the future of finance and the future of banking here, all right? Let's see how big they are. So I went to Grok and pulled these numbers up. Now, Grok said in 2023, they actually stopped putting out actual numbers as far as their user base goes because the government had a problem with that. Now, we all know that the government has less of a problem with all of these things. But for what it's worth, and it's tough too because some people have duplicate wallets, but what they're saying is Coinbase has about 120 million users right now. And about anywhere from 40 to 50% of that is in the United States, which I always say on here. People don't always like the fact that I always bring up the U.S., but people also don't understand just how much money is there. It is still so lopsidedly stupid amounts of money that come out of the United States. And we have to play the game in front of us, no matter where you are. But if we were to rank these large crypto exchanges / banks in the United States, remember, we always try to invest in best of breed here. We always try really hard to invest as who is already established and has almost an insurmountable lead. That's very, very appealing to us because we want to invest in things which are going to probably win. And there's nobody out there in the United States better positioned to not probably, but almost certainly win. I'm just going to say it, than Coinbase is. But if you want the actual numbers, I had Grok do that too. And Coinbase in the United States is estimated about 60 million. Number 2 is actually Robinhood with 20 million. So Coinbase has already 3x'd the second place competitor here. For what it's worth, Kraken has about 14 million. And then you have Crypto.com with anywhere from 10 to 15 million. But the lead is bananas. Now, if you want to go worldwide, if you just take the non-US user base of Coinbase and stack that up against the rest of the world's exchanges, they would be second. You have a Binance with 120 million users outside the United States. And then second place, you actually have a two-way tie estimated between Coinbase and Bybit. And then OKX and Huobi are behind them. So just as far as exchanges go, Coinbase is number 1 by far in the US and could be number 2 in the entire world after you minus their US user base. All right. What's even more interesting, however, to me, is where Coinbase already stacks up amidst the world's largest banks. I want you to know that you can do almost everything you can do at a bank on Coinbase, plus more. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but for ranking-wise, I want to illustrate this to you. So I also had Grok rank the 10 largest banks in the world, and 1 through 4, does anybody care to guess what they all have in common? Chinese. And then number 5 is SBI, State Bank of India. And I'm not going to... Okay, I am going to say it. Those banks don't count. They just don't have a large enough worldwide presence to where most people can actually use them. I know in some places people can outside of those countries, but for the most part, not known as global banks. So I'm just going to chop those off and not even include those. If I do that, can anybody now tell me, as far as estimated user base goes, who is the number 1 bank in the entire world? as far as the most amount of users? Well, that would be JP Morgan Chase with 80 million. And after that, it is Bank of America with about 69 million. And next is a two-way tie with Wells Fargo and Coinbase. Contrarians, Coinbase has only been around for 12 years. It is now the number 3 largest retail bank in the world, if you don't count the more closed-off banks in China and India. Does anybody miss the significance here? Do I even need to go on with this? And it would have probably been even higher had it not been for all the regulatory scrutiny that they had to deal with during the Biden administration, which is over. We now have the opposite of this in the White House in terms of crypto. But if you like to bet on people, Brian Armstrong is probably as good as it gets, the CEO of Coinbase. He navigated these waters, especially politically. And still, Coinbase really survived the Biden administration about as good as anybody. IPO'd, crashed, as they often do, and then came back with a vengeance. I heard on a podcast this past week that, it's anecdotal, but one of the guys there saying pretty much every guy I know in my 40s says, hey, Coinbase is pretty much my bank now. And these are people in their 40s. We also said before how kids who are probably 8, 9, 10 years old now will never own a leather wallet. This is going to be it. And why wouldn't they sign up to a place like a Coinbase? We've all used banks, right? For those of you who have used banks and used crypto, which one is better? By a fucking mile. Crypto. Every time I use crypto, I'm like, why can't banks just do this? Banks are the most frustrating things on the planet. And I think I have the best, most functional bank with Chase of all time. And I still have nightmares with them at times. Don't even get me started on the offshore banks. I'm glad I have them, but it can be such an uphill battle at times. Not to mention they're expensive and they're slow. Crypto just checks off none of those boxes. But Coinbase, let's go back to Coinbase real quick. You're like, well, I can't do all the things on Coinbase that I can do at my bank. Wrong. I don't know why somebody would say that without already knowing all the things Coinbase can do. So let's go over those. With Coinbase, can you open up an account in minutes? Yes. Hold USD? Yes. Earn interest and yield on that cash? Yes. Direct deposit? Yes. Free ACH transfers in and out? Yes, you can. Visa or MasterCard debit card? Yes. Apple Pay and Google Pay? Absolutely. Bill pay with Coinbase? Sure can. Send money to your friends instantly? Yes. Buy or sell stocks or ETFs? Did you know you can actually do this on Coinbase? I actually did not, but it turns out you can. Wire transfers? Yes. In and out, both. Getting a physical or virtual card number? Yes, you can do both there. ATM withdrawals? Absolutely. Real-time transaction alerts? Yes. Two-factor authentication? Yes. Disputing a charge? Fraud protection? Yes. Not only that, but Coinbase now, I heard this, I haven't verified it, now offers the same $250,000 FDIC insurance that every other major American bank has. Bananas. That's one of the best things about banking in the United States is you get that FDIC protection. Now, we've talked on the show, we don't know how much money the FDIC actually has if something were to go really, really bad with American banks. But as far as, let's just even say, just as far as a selling point goes, that's amazing. Who's the next highest? I think it's like 100,000. It's not even close. That's awesome, awesome, awesome. Can you apply for loans? Absolutely. And you get better rates and they're faster. It is just a superior product, top to bottom, already. The only reason most people haven't already migrated, because this would be a slam dunk normally, is they're just like, I don't know. Or, in my case with Chase, I'm too in love with the credit card points benefits I'm getting. But I am one of those 60 million American customers, you bet. And I do a number of things on Coinbase. And I'm considering doing more. So Coinbase is already this big and this awesome and has such a lead on all of its competitors in the space, not named Binance, but Binance does not have access to the American market. and as an investable vehicle is far superior to most banks because they have such low overhead compared to most banks. They can operate with far less employees, far less buildings. They don't have any local branches, and that's a good thing. That factors into the balance sheet. And for what it's worth, I did a run through my 4 different fundamental analysis sources, and they are ranking it anywhere from a hold to a buy at current prices. So let's take that info and transition into the solutions portion of this episode. Again, as always, not financial advice, but having broad scale positions in your portfolio is so vital. I love my big miner stocks. I love my gold and silver mining ETFs like GDX, SLVP, that do move slower, but when it's time to move, they still move. They move a lot. And stocks like this form the foundation of my overall portfolio. You might remember a long time ago I talked about having that soccer team to where you have your goalie, which, in this case, like in precious metals, that would be kind of having physical metal. And then you have your backs, which are your mining stock ETFs, maybe royalty companies there as well. Things that aren't going to move up quite as much, but give you really great downside protection all the same, which we deeply value here on the podcast. And just when it comes to the entire crypto market, I cannot right now think of a better place. And I don't know if a better place is coming. And this better place just happens to be on sale right now. If we just look at the whole crypto market and why it fell the way it did, compared to the other times when it went down this much, it doesn't make a lot of sense. X does not really equal Y the same way it did back when FTX crashed, for example. It's overall it's a real fugazi drop in the grand scheme of things. It should not have dropped this much based on the reasons they're giving. Yet it still dropped a lot, which is the absolute definition of sweet divergence. And every time there's sweet divergence, we look to pull the trigger, and there has very rarely been a time where that did not work in our favor. Now, as far as timing, I've said this before, when it comes to things like Bitcoin and gold, you just buy whenever. You don't sit there and try to get cute and time it, because that's exactly how you end up with zero. That's how a lot of people have ended up with zero. With Coinbase, you could buy it now. I don't think you would be, I think you'd be well served for the future if you locked in some Coinbase stock now. But timing-wise, 2 things. We've already established here on the show that on most of your monthly charts, you've probably already gotten a bear signal on Bitcoin, which does mean something. Charts are wrong. If you do it right, they are correct more often than they are incorrect, but they are still wrong. And the bear signal we are getting is a counter trend signal. I would like it better if it wasn't, but it is. Now, if you go look at a chart of Coinbase, it's like I said, it's still crypto. Crypto sometimes moves faster than our charts can hold. And if you look on the monthly, that's not a pretty chart. It's all over the place. I'm not sure what you would do with that from a timing perspective. So do this instead. Zoom in to the weekly, ticker symbol COIN. Look at it on the weekly chart. Much better, isn't it? Now, what you'll notice here as well is it looks like we're right in the middle of forming a bear flag. Might still be too early to tell, but kind of looks like that might be what's happening, coupled with the fact that we're getting bearish signals on the Bitcoin monthly charts. You might want to put this on your radar. You definitely want to put this on your radar, but you might want to wait a bit if you really want to start building a position here. Again, this logic is exactly how people end up with zero. So maybe put half in now and then average down if price does fall. But just so you know, chart-wise, that's what's going on, not just with Bitcoin, but with the Coinbase stock itself. But when you consider what this stock has done in such a short amount of time, the way it has infiltrated the entire banking world and has become the preferred choice for the younger generations of the entire planet, and how you can already do everything there you can do with a bank, and how it has an extraordinary, almost insurmountable lead already on its competitors, and you can get it on sale. You guys know I'm currently short on cash right now because I've spent a bunch of it, but I'm not going to go forward in life without some Coinbase stock in my portfolio. I'm already allocated pretty well to the crypto space, but it doesn't matter. I will be getting some. Now, when I'm not going to disclose that, I always say I do this with crypto coins and tokens, but I don't necessarily do it with stocks. You guys are on your own here. I'm not a signal service, even though I'm nice enough to disclose all of my actual crypto token positions. But why would you need help here? You guys know what to do. This is potentially, and I'm almost going to say likely, some generational shit we're talking about here. Find a way. Because given everything I've just told you in these past 20 minutes, I don't think any of this is even remotely crazy. This one's just kind of obvious.